Okay.
All right. Facebook,
Hello.
Instagram, YouTube. What's going on, everybody? Just gonna check real quick that we're live over here. We've got a fun little masterclass for you guys today with my friend Rob over at Class. Let me see if we're live. Yep, sure are. Cool. All right. Hey guys. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And more, if you can do me a favor, go ahead and share it in the event page that was created so it'll notify everybody. As you guys are jumping on, do me a favor, go ahead and say hello in the comments. If you guys have questions, go ahead and put them in the comments. We'll come back to answer them. Also, if you're catching the replay, let us know. So this is going to be a really great masterclass today. If you are in real estate or mortgage, or you're an investor. And part of the reason why I wanted to put this class together is I was having investors that I was working with that were doing the BRRRR strategy, and where that is where you're buying a fixer, you're doing the rehab, and then you're refiing out into a long-term hold. That sometimes on that refi out, they weren't doing their numbers based on actual information for that final appraised value. And there were some key things that I was seeing consistently that I asked my friend Rob here from Class Valuation to come over and do a masterclass on reconsideration of value that's going to give you all the information that you need to accurately assess what current market value is. And then especially if you in mortgage and you've been getting, I just had, I don't know, a handful of issues on appraisals where I wasn't getting the value. And there is a standard process that we have to do a reconsideration of value by giving the appraiser additional information to hopefully get the value that you're anticipating. So Rob's going to walk us through that. Like I said, if you guys have questions, comments, all that kind of stuff, put them in the chat box and we will answer them. So welcome. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I appreciate you inviting me along.
Yeah, I want to tell you like my partnership with you guys. So you guys, if you guys don't use Class Appraisal, I started using them. I mean, I've used them a lot throughout my career, but really started dedicating most of my business their way when they became a sponsor of my event. And so, but one thing I have learned though, is it's very important that you have a good relationship with your AMC. It makes a world of a difference because every once in a while I'll get an appraisal that was not ordered with you guys that comes back and I have an issue with it. And let me not tell you, like having an issue on an appraisal is like a pain in the ass to begin with. It's even worse when you don't have a direct contact to talk to. It's like pulling teeth to get anything done. I just had one yesterday. They were like, give me the biggest attitude. So I'm so grateful that I have partnerships with you guys. You guys have been enormously helpful in a lot of my appraisal issues. So thank you so much. I appreciate that.
No worries, that's what we're here for. Over the last 10 years, I've learned being here at Class that it's all about relationships, really. That's what it actually boils down to. We switched up our model a while back to where we now have, we're working off the AE model. So you have one point of contact. I mean, obviously, you can always reach out to me direct, but you have somebody who's there for you, dedicated day, night. You send something over. You don't have a 1-800 number to call into. You know exactly who you can call, talk to, and get it solved. And if that's not working, you know you can always pick up the phone and call me too, right? So we've seen a lot of success with it. And again, I mean, pretty much just like life, it's all based on the relationships and how strong they are, right? And you have to nurture them sometimes, right? It's a back and forth.
Yeah.
We're always here for you. We're here for all of our clients. We're the
Yeah.
largest AMC in the nation. We're proud of what we're doing. And yeah.
It makes a big deal when you have somebody advocating for you. For some reason, that personal relationship, having somebody advocate for you to the appraiser, it's been way more helpful than just like being just another name and number, whatever. It's like knowing somebody and like knowing that they're working on behalf of you. I have so much more faith in the fact that somebody's actually trying to advocate for me than just any other of the AMCs that we sometimes work with.
The word advocate's a little tricky when it comes to my profession, right? So technically, I'm not allowed to advocate for anyone, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to bend over backwards when I see a problem and get it solved, right? And I'm not going to stop digging until we get to the bottom of it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it feels like somebody's advocating me. Feels like somebody heard me, where a lot of times I'm like,
I
"Oh,
am always listening. I am an active listener.
there. Thank you." Well, let's get into it. You want me to go ahead and add these to the slides up?
Yeah, throw them
Okay.
up and we can go through this. My thought here is I've got I don't know, about a 15-minute presentation, and it covers not just it covers not just the reconsideration pieces, but I'm going to touch on just some appraisal 101 stuff too, because I
Great.
don't know what everybody's skill set is. So I like to add a little bit of everything in here so folks get a better understanding of how things work, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
So with that, I want to talk a little bit about the company. We've been around since 2009. We have access to 24,000 appraisers nationwide. Every AMC has access to that same pool of appraisers. The difference with us is we have over 220 appraisers who actually are employees of Class. They are team members. If you have something that needs to happen, like right now, Paige, you call me and say, Rob, this has got to happen. As long as that deal is with one of our staff, I can just pick up the phone and call. I'm not calling a contractor, right? I'm calling somebody that I work with every day and say, hey, Joe, hey, Sue, can you drop what you're doing and take care of this for me? It'll only take you 5 minutes, right? Our response times on things have improved greatly. And the experience overall is just better all around for everybody. You can see we have over 700 team members. We are the largest AMC in the country. The most impressive number here, right? Over 425,000 appraisals last year. Over the course of our existence, we've completed over 2.25 million appraisals. So yeah, we're getting stuff done over here. I don't like to talk about myself much, but I'm going to throw this out there. I've been with the organization for nearly a decade. I am a licensed real estate appraiser in the state of Michigan. I've been at it for a very, very long time, over 2 decades. I like being outdoors and I like golf too, right? All right, so let's jump in. Who and what? I think that this is important to start with because I think people get confused and they think an appraiser is like out to get them or to kill their deal. One of the first things that we learn, and it's literally part of our guidelines and what we operate with every day, is to promote the public trust. And we do that through being independent, impartial, and completely objective, right? We complete assignments with no bias, and we do it competently, right? We're the only folks without skin in the game. I have yet to meet an appraiser who wakes up in the morning and says, how many deals can I kill today, right? How big can I put the target on my chest, right? I want everybody to read every line of my report and pick it apart until they find every mistake. No. Again, we're going out, we're looking at these homes, and we're just trying to come up with a fair market value for these places. Which brings me around to the appraisal itself. It's nothing more than an opinion of value, right? Now, it's easier said than done, but in the end, that's what it is. It's the appraiser's opinion based on the market analysis that they've completed. I think it's important too to touch here that there's a few different ways to get to your opinion of value in our space, real estate. There's the income approach, which is pretty obvious, right? Figuring out how much something's worth by the amount of money that it brings in. Think rental property, right? Then there's the cost approach, which also self-explanatory, figuring out the value of something based off of what it costs to reproduce or rebuild, okay? But where the rubber meets the road is the sales comparison approach, the market approach. That's what Fannie, Freddie, HUD, your reports have to be based on that approach with support from anything else. The other approaches to value, you can use them to support your opinion, but the sales comparison approach is really what we need to focus on, right? Which comes around to alternate sales and comparables and the ROV process, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So we're cut off a little bit here, but that's okay. I can talk through it. Reconsideration of value. You're going to hear me say ROV quite a bit. That's what that stands for, reconsideration of value. And really, it's just the opportunity to have the appraiser revisit the report with maybe some data that they may have overlooked or it slipped past them, right? I mean, at the end of the day, appraisers are only human. Mistakes get made. This is the opportunity for the borrower to bring alternate sales to the table and maybe see a flex in that opinion, right? So this actually never was part of policy with Fannie or Freddie or HUD, right? There was really nothing on the books addressing the ROV process. Now there will be, and it's happening on October 31st, this year, Halloween, right? There's changes made, there's rules in place. Most of them are going to impact the lenders, but there are a few pieces that everyone out there and the public are going to need to know about. All right. So, with that, what it means for the lender, they're going to need to have somebody in place who can sift through all the data that's coming over and make sure that it's relevant before it goes over to the appraiser, right? We don't really want to send over frivolous stuff, but the lender's going to need to have somebody who understands an appraisal, can read through it, and maybe even play an appraiser on TV if they had to, right? We need to make sure that there's a process for disclosure to the borrower. I think it's important for me to stress here that a lot of these changes that they're making are borrower centric, so that the borrower is more involved in the process. The borrower is going to need to be made aware that an ROV is being processed or started, right? Again, it's pulling them into the fold to have more say in the process, right? Because I think most of us see it a lot of times. The borrower, especially on a refi, well, no, my house should be worth 700,000. This came in at 680. This is crazy, right? This is their opportunity to get more involved and have any questions answered too that they might have, right? The other piece here, standardized format for communicating the rationale, requirements, supporting docs. What that means right there is we just want to make sure that we're sending over factual data, right? And the ROV process should not revolve around feelings or emotions in any way. I know that's easier said than done, but just try to take emotion out of the equation. Don't look at things through the lens of price point. Look at everything through how similar is it? How similar is this property to the subject property? That's really what you want to key in on. The last requirement is retention of all docs for the life of the loan. Pretty simple stuff, right? Now, interestingly enough, for the appraiser, this is where things get interesting because now it is a matter of policy. The appraiser is obligated to respond to every ROV request. In the past, it wasn't written anywhere that an appraiser had to respond to an ROV. Now, you'd think just good business practice, right? You would, as an appraiser, respond to one of these. But I've seen it in the past where appraisers are like, nope, I'm not answering. Everything's already in my report. Read the report. Read the report. I'm not responding to this. And outside of being less than professional in a big way, they're really and making a complaint about that and maybe, amending a profile on this end. We really couldn't do much more. But now that all changes with this. The appraiser is obligated to respond logically to any of the questions that are asked. And they have to be specific with their commentary, right? And they also have to have a reasonable turn time on this stuff. They can't just sit on it for weeks at a time. With that said, there's nothing in writing that I've seen yet that spells out how long that time frame should be. Here at Class, we've had all of these procedures in place for 10 years more, and we're all set to go with this. Like, there's nothing here that we need to change on our end. We give an appraiser 48 hours to respond on an ROV, which is usually more than enough time, right? So let's get right into it, right? When you're placing your ROV, this is a little bit of the do's and don'ts here, right? We want to supply sales, not listings or pendings. There is a place for those in the appraisal process, but the ROV isn't where it's at, right? We want to try to find sales that are as good or better than what's already in the report. We are looking for MLS sales, not just Zillow stuff that you find or going through a public record search of sales on your street and you find something that looks great. The appraiser has to be able to verify and confirm all of the information, and that's where the MLS is so important. Now, for our friends out there who are doing loans in the new construction market, if that's the case, where maybe you aren't advertising these on the MLS, maybe they're not being listed that way, it's important to remember that you can supply the appraiser with all of the docs, all of the information, right? Whatever the builder has. So by that, I mean the build out list, the amount and level of upgrades, right? Like if you have all that and you can get it in front of the appraiser, it's perfectly reasonable to include that into the report from the appraiser's perspective. A concise narrative explaining why the requester believes the data is better than what's already there. It doesn't have to be a book that you're writing, right? I can't stress that enough. You don't have to go way down the rabbit hole on this. You find a great sale in the MLS that's around the corner that's not in the report, and you're wondering why, include it in the ROV and just state as much. This sale looks more relevant for its proximity to the subject, or maybe it's a more recent date of sale, or maybe it's more similar in size, right? Again, you don't have to write a book on it. Just a reason why you think it's better. Lastly, this is a change that is written in stone now. There's only going to be one ROV request permitted, right, per appraisal. So you want to make sure that you swing for the fences, right? Because we're only getting one shot. And you can send up to 5 sales now too. That's also part of policy. For a long time, our policy was 3 sales, then we switched it to 4. Well, now the GSEs have come in and said, no, you know what, 5 sales is fine. And I can agree with that. It's not an unreasonable number. So what to look for in competing properties. I have these set up not in any, the only order these are set up in is how you would see them on the sales grid, okay? They're not necessarily in the level of importance, but these are the ones that I see happen time and time again. These are the most hot button topics, right? Where I see the most conflict that I'm working to resolve revolves around these items. So proximity. The first 3 words we learn in this business, right? Location, 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 right? To me, that's proximity, proximity, proximity. How close is it, right, to the subject property? You just want to try and find stuff that's preferably in the same sub. I know that doesn't always work out that way, but start your search close by and then work your way out, right? You might be surprised by some of the stuff you see right in the immediate subdivision. Date of sale is obviously important. Anything that happened after the effective date of the report in the appraiser's world never really took place, right? Because we're always working backwards. Everybody else that's involved is working towards a future event. And us as appraisers, we're stuck in time on the effective date. And anything that happens after that, that's where the pendings and listings, we really can't send them over to the appraiser because it's a possible future event. Location and view. I think these should probably be pretty obvious to most folks, but I see it happen all the time where we have a home that's gorgeous, it's beautiful, it's well updated, it's outstanding in every way, and it's in the middle of a nice little conforming subdivision. All the homes are the same cookie cutter, and then they send over 3 sales and all of them are lakefront properties, right? Chances are we're going to run into trouble if we're sending over stuff that is that dissimilar to the subject, right? And even inside, like this example here, the difference between you can be in the same subdivision, but if you back to the busy street versus being tucked inside the middle of the subdivision on a nice little quiet cul-de-sac, there might be differences in marketability between those two. So just keep this kind of stuff at the front of your mind. Age. Again, this one, all of these are kind of common sense, but it's worth touching on all of them. If you're dealing with an older home, let's just say not even that old, it's 5 years old, you probably want to avoid sending over new construction because that's almost like its own little market unto itself. It's like a sub-market, right? Just try to stick apples to apples as much as possible whenever you can. The biggest thing I would say from my seat, I think that drives most people in the purchasing process is condition, right? As soon as they walk through the door, right? Does it smell like potpourri, or does it smell like somebody needs to clean the litter box? Does it, right? Has the kitchen already been updated and in a modern way, right? That's more marketable? Or am I going to have to dump, $50,000 into this kitchen to get it where I want? So when you're looking at alternate sales, again, just don't do it through rose-colored glasses. Just look at it realistically, take the emotion out. Would you buy this property versus the subject property? Would you pay more for this one versus the subject, right? GLA, for those of you who don't know, gross living area. And assuming we're nationwide, right, where not everywhere has a lot of below grade areas, right? I'm thinking here like Florida and that kind of thing, but below grade is below grade. Above grade is the GLA. That's the only thing that the appraiser is going to be reporting on that line for gross living area, right? There's a distinction. Bed and bath count, the number of bedrooms, bathrooms, basic. It's one of the easier things to adjust for typically, but it's something to pay attention to, right? This is a real world example of how all of these pieces come together and what it looks like on the sale grid and kind of how to make heads or tails of it. One of the things I want to touch on here, in case everybody doesn't understand or doesn't know, the comparables are always adjusted to the subject property, right? So if you have a gorgeous subject property and the house next door sold, but it's not quite as gorgeous, I would put it in the report and then I would adjust it upward so that it matches where the subject is, right? That adjustment is going to be in a dollar amount, okay? So inferior comes up, superior comes down on adjustments, right? So in this instance, you can see the subject's in red, and then we've got two other comps up there that are in that same development as the subject. You'll notice there's a little creek that cuts through this area. The south side of that creek was a different builder who was using a higher level of construction, better quality materials. And so all the homes over there were selling at a higher price point. So now with that in mind, we're going to jump to the sale grid, okay? And you can see how this relates. So the first column is the subject property. The next one is comp number 1, 2, 3, 4 accordingly, okay? Comp 1, you notice, model match, same subdivision, same builder. Now, in this instance, we were in an increasing market, and you'll see date of sale, there's a $27,000 adjustment there, right? The appraiser is telling us values are increasing. This is an older sale, so think inferior, older. They're adjusting it upward to meet up with where the market is. I hope that makes sense, right? You notice comps 2 and 3, just below that date of sale line adjustment, you can see they've adjusted it downward. Both of those sales were adjusted downward $10,000. And that is for location in a different part of this sub that was built by the different builder, right? Again, higher price point, the appraiser recognized it and adjusted those sales downward for differences in location. Also, by the way, you'll notice that the subject property has an NRES for location. That means neutral residential. N stands for neutral, A stands for adverse, and B stands for beneficial. Whenever you see that on the grid, know that that's what they're talking about, okay? And then the fourth comp is an active listing. We put active listings in the report to, one, demonstrate marketability, right? There's other properties that are similar that are out there for purchase, right? And also, a lot of times, your listings can, depending on, the circumstances, they can almost be considered a ceiling for value in some ways, right? It's the principle of substitution. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole and bore everybody to death with that. But in the end, This is almost like a perfect example of how the appraisal process works, right? After all the adjustments, you can see at the top of the sale grid, all of the unadjusted sale prices are at the top, just below the addresses and the proximities. Then down at the bottom, the red box, you can see the adjusted prices. And that's exactly what should happen when you're making your adjustments as an appraiser. Your range of value should go from being this wide to this wide. And then you can develop your opinion out of that range of value, right? In this instance, I believe it appraised at 523. Okay. So, with all that said, keys to a positive outcome, the best advice I can give you is to read through the report. It is not riveting. It's not going to keep you up at night like a Stephen King novel, right? But reading through it, you might learn why the appraiser did this or did that, or why they went to this neighborhood instead of going over to that neighborhood. The flip side of that, you might find out the appraiser doesn't recognize that the subject's in super school district A versus all of the sales being in okay school district B, right? So that's where you read through that report. You might find answers, or you might end up with more questions, right? Want to just jump back to send sales similar in condition, quality, view, age, etc. When you're going through the report, look at the parameters that the appraiser used. If the appraiser went out 1.5 miles to find a comp, that means the door's open for you to go out 1.5 miles if you need to. If they went back, let's just say for the sake of argument, 14 months, a little over a year to find a sale, that opens a door for you, right? You can walk through. If you're doing stuff like that, make sure that you're grabbing something that is every bit as similar physically to the subject property that you can find. Don't sweat the small stuff. We get this a lot in the requests that come over, and I get it. Borrowers spend money and they expect that that's going to have an immediate impact, right, in the process. That, I spent $100,000 on this. But if you spent $100,000 on, new light fixtures and a new privacy fence and a new mailbox, a lot of this stuff can be boiled down to market expectations, right? And lastly, cost doesn't always equal value. You might have a home, you might decide to get all of your fixtures gold plated in your home, right? Or diamond encrusted doorknobs. As an appraiser, if I can't find another home with diamond encrusted doorknobs, I'm going to have a tough time proving that it's worth X amount of money and making the adjustment in the appraisal report, right? So things to keep at the front of mind. You know what? We can skip past this one. This is a little compressed, but I did throw this in here just so that everybody understands. Try to make the job as easy as you can for the appraiser. If you have updates, anything that you've done to the home in the last 15 years, put it all together in a little packet for the appraiser, right? If you're the listing agent, get as much information as possible. You have title work, you have a plat map or a survey, give that to the appraiser. This can include the sales that were used for listing purposes. That's completely reasonable and fair. The more information an appraiser has, the better job they can do every single time. And with that, I say thank you, and we can open up the floor to any questions that anyone may have at all.
Great. So I have plenty of questions.
Okay,
I love the whole advice of prepping a packet for the appraiser.
Yeah.
With, this is all the stuff that has been redone, that's new.
Mhm.
The appraiser may not know all of that. They may not know that you replace some of these things. So that, I think, is great.
Mhm.
And helps them out, makes their job easy. I'm sure if you had a reconsideration of value and you made their job real easy, they're probably really open to working with you on it. So
Mhm.
that sounds awesome. When you were talking about it's assumed to, like, it's in that cost thing, is like a new roof. I see people ask this a lot of times in appraisal groups. It's like, what's the value of a new roof? There is no value. There's no addition because you have a new roof. It's like, you're supposed to have a good roof.
That's
You know?
exactly right. That is a perfect example of a market expectation. I'm buying a house because I expect that it's going to keep me warm and dry, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's worth noting though, the same time, if you and I are going to buy a house, right? And we walk up and they say, "Yeah, well, this roof was just put on last year." We might be willing to pay a premium. We probably would be willing to pay a premium for that because it's one less thing that we have to concern ourselves with. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you've spent $50,000 on that roof that you're going to see a line item on the grid, $50,000 new roof. It
Yeah.
just usually doesn't work that way.
I think that's the hard part a lot of times. Just talking from like flipping houses, we're often trying to make those decisions of like, where am I spending money? Where is it going to get me value on an appraisal? Where is it not going to get me value on an appraisal? Where does it get me more money in an offer price? Where does it make my sale happen faster? And so those are the questions that you're looking to answer. Um, can we also talk about this? Like, because I get like a lot of times with permitted and unpermitted, and am I going to get the value on my appraisal? Or if I'm not going to get my value on my appraisal, it kind of feels like that's not really set in stone. It's per appraiser.
Yes. So you have, I lovingly refer to some of my peers as permit police, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of being the permit cop. That's not my job, right? If I walk into a property and they've put 1,000 square foot addition off the back of this place and it's been done to the nines, right? It matches everything else in the house. There's nothing strange. When I'm walking through, I would never know that this was just put up 6 months ago, right? Your typical buyer is going to do the same thing, right? Whether or not there were permits pulled isn't the question. Has it been completed in a manner that conforms with the rest of the property? And it's not like glaring in any way. I understand a lot of appraisers, I think, get hung up on the liability pieces of it.
Hmm.
It's not there is no crime in saying public record says this place is 1,000 square feet. My measurements show that it's 1,500 square feet. I've been informed that there was a 500-foot addition put on the back of the property 6 months ago. I couldn't find anything at the building department that shows permits were pulled, but it has been completed in a workmanlike manner, for lack of a better word, and it
Hmm.
conforms to the rest of the property. There are no issues here. Move on with your life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it should be.
Yeah. Can we talk about this bed bath count
Mhm.
and like what the adjustments are? There's a difference between going from like a one bath to a two bath. But if you're going from a 4 to a 5, it just doesn't have that same impact, and so you can't just make that assumption that adding that bath is gonna get you that same adjustment.
That's exactly right. And you hit it right there on the head, right? There are break points when we're in this, right? So a 3 bedroom to a 4 bedroom, right? Most people who are going, we're just going to stick with the American Pie dream here, right? You're buying your first home, you're going to have 2.2 kids, a cat, and a dog, right? You're going to need at least 3 bedrooms, right? Anything above and beyond that is, you know, it's
Extra.
it's extra. That's right. But to go backwards, you're
Mhm.
not even going to be in the market for a 2 bedroom home, right? In that scenario. So if the appraiser doesn't have anything except, or maybe the appraiser has to include a 2 bedroom home for whatever reason, you would definitely expect to see an adjustment upward on that 2 bedroom.
Yep.
But for the 4 bedroom, not so much. And then, like you said, beyond there, 4, 5, 6, I mean, it gets to a point where
You're just gonna probably get an adjustment in a GLA instead of, like, an
that's
actual
exactly right.
value increase,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the same thing too, like you mentioned with the 1 bathroom, right? So think of right, the 2.2 kids, mom and dad and the dog and the cat. That 1 bathroom is going to be really, really tight.
Yeah,
Somebody's going to pay a premium for the extra bathroom or even a half bath, right? But again, there's break points there, right? Just keep that at the front of your mind. You'll be all right.
Yeah, so if you guys are flipping houses or doing any of that BRRRR method, when you're looking for those value add opportunities, there is that, like, if you got a 2-1, oh, getting it to a 2-2 is gonna make a way bigger impact, right? So, or maybe you have, I know for me, I would look at, like, what's my gross living area, like, what's my GLA, what's the square foot? And
Mhm.
I'm like, it's only a 2-bedroom? I got 1,200 square feet in a 2-bedroom house. Like, I could get another bedroom in there, right? And that's gonna put more value because my GLA is not changing. But going into another extra bedroom is gonna increase that value.
Mhm.
So those are some cool things to look at. Let's I get this a lot too. Um, Square foot adjustment, where it's
Mhm.
like, oh, well, per square foot. And then you're like, well, everything's selling here for 250 a square foot. And you're like, yeah, and that's not how we appraise houses.
No. So the price per square foot, I was just talking about this earlier today. It really is, it's a metric for us, right? Really, when I'm looking at price per square foot, I'm using it as a quick way to look at, let's say, what was the price per square foot 6 months ago in this neighborhood versus what it is now. I'm not looking at price per square foot and saying, oh, this should be adjusted for GLA at 240 bucks a square foot. That number is nothing more than the sale price divided by the size of the property. That's all it is. And it pulls everything in. So if you do happen to have those diamond encrusted doorknobs and gold plated fixtures, it's just pushing it all in there. You got a pool, you've got an outdoor kitchen. It takes everything into account. The appraisal process, when you're trying to figure out what needs to be adjusted for, what are participants reacting to, price per square foot goes out the window. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
breaking all of that price per square foot is getting broken down into little tiny pieces that I can chew and figure out how it all works, what each facet needs to be adjusted for.
Yeah. For this specific property.
That specific property in that specific market. Each appraisal is a new assignment, and each one is requires geographic competency. And what happens right here in this sub might not be the same thing that's happening just a mile over down the street, right?
Yeah, yeah. I also have clients a lot of times, be mindful if you guys are buying something that is very specific, those ones can get a little bit more difficult to ascertain a value on if there's no comps to support it. And so they'll be like, "Oh, well, houses X amount of years ago were selling for here and we've appreciated by X amount of percent." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's great, but I have no comps. Like, I don't have anything that is this specific of a house that is, historic in nature on 5 acres, blah, blah,
That's
blah."
a good example, right? So, let's say a horse property in Colorado, right? The rate of appreciation for horse properties might not be the same as it is for, right, the three
Suburban.
bedroom, 1.5 bath property that's the dwelling that's just sitting in a conforming subdivision, right? Those are two different markets, and markets act differently, right?
Yeah, I've had appraisers on very specific stuff, like, go really far, like, other cities over, like, I'm like, "That is really far," or I have clients where they're like, "This Airbnb makes a ton of money," and I'm like, "Well, that's great because you're doing a residential loan, and on a residential loan, we're gonna be using comparable sales model, not an income approach, so, like, you can't go a half hour away because there's another Airbnb a half hour away that's grossing the same amount." The lender doesn't care. And so understanding those models that the lenders are using is going to be very important when you do your
Sometimes,
loan.
yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes there's properties too that are just completely outside the box, right? So think penthouse condo, high rise, right? Uh, I happen to be in Michigan, downtown Detroit, right? Those aren't just out there everywhere selling like hotcakes, right? Usually there's only one or two penthouses. If those haven't sold, and there's usually not a big turnover on stuff like that, you're really going to have to think outside the box. You might find yourself having to go into a different city, right? I might have to go into just, and this is just an example. Don't nobody hold my feet to the fire, please. But maybe I have to go and look in like Birmingham
Mm,
because there were some penthouse sales over there or wherever. You never know, right? Like a mentor gave me an example of this exact same thing many, many moons ago. And he started searching in other cities around the country just to see kind of what was happening in this market. People with that much money, when you're talking about a 6,000 square foot penthouse, right? You've got the money. Is this going to be the only spot that you're going to want to have this penthouse
mhm.
condo? That might be your first choice, but you might be willing to look at other stuff too. And if that's the case, maybe there's room in there where you can come up with adjustments and you can try to figure out what the value is, even though there's very limited data.
Yeah, and your lending options might have to be different now, right? So there's a
Oh,
bigger picture than just the
yeah.
appraisal that you probably need a different lending option. Where I see stuff like that happening, and I'm hoping we get more data on the books, is in ADUs. Because here in, I know not everybody's doing ADUs and stuff like that, but here in California, it has become a thing because we lack so much housing.
Mhm.
And so getting like an actual like decent number on a value and adjustment for an ADU has been very difficult for me. I remember a couple of years ago, I helped a friend buy a house and it had an ADU and they gave me $15,000 for it. And I was like, okay, I guess that's the gross living area adjustment that you're giving me for that space. But I was like, this is crazy because this thing is going to rent for $2,000 and
Mhm.
they're going to like,
Mhm. Right.
so it was like, that's actually not the effective value of it, but there weren't any comps, right? And so it's like,
That's the thing. The entire appraisal process really revolves around the data that you have available to you, right?
yeah,
And I mean, again, we come back around to the sales comparison approach is where the rubber meets the road. But maybe that's where you start bringing in some of these other concepts, like your
mhm,
income approach,
yeah,
and you talk about it. And if you can convey what you're seeing onto the people who are making the lending decision, right? It
yeah.
makes life a lot easier for everybody involved in the process.
Yeah, luckily we started to get guidelines. Lending just lags behind what's happening in the real market. It's like we had gig economy for a while, and then it was like, oh, okay, we better get some guidelines for gig economy. And now we have this ADU thing, and now we're starting to get guidelines around it. So
Yep.
everything's going to lag around that. I'm sure we're going to get some changes along Airbnb models. We have some now guidelines around that. So maybe
Right.
some,
The short-term rental thing, that's a
yeah,
big hot button topic too. Yes,
yeah.
it
So
is.
hopefully we'll continue to grow in that side.
Mhm.
Let me ask you also, sometimes people in, appraisal forums will ask, what is the value for a pool? What is the solar also? And it's like these things, it really depends on the market. A pool in Scottsdale is going to be worth a whole lot more than a pool in like Michigan.
That's exactly right, right? I have completed appraisals where they had a beautiful pool, but you're talking about an amenity that you're only gonna use for, let's be realistic, 3 months out of the year, right? To some people, to a buyer, they might walk up and go, "Oh, this is the perfect house," and then they get around in the backyard and go, "Oh, no, there's a pool," right?
Mm-hmm.
It's an immediate liability to them, right? What if a kid jumps in there and they go pool hopping in the middle of the night and somebody gets hurt or oh, all the maintenance that I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to make sure that I drain this every year. I have to make sure it doesn't freeze over in the winter. All these other things, right? Pretty much, like I said earlier, every single appraisal, it's an assignment. It's a new assignment. Everything is contingent upon where it's at, what's happening in that market. The same can be said for adjustments. What impacts one person, like you just said in Scottsdale, is going to be completely different for somebody else in Maine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, could
Demand.
be.
Like,
Yes.
what's the demand for it, and
What's
how
the
does that
demand?
market respond to it?
What's the supply? What's the demand? That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
What are you guys doing for solar? Are you guys looking at like output? If I have a real effective solar output, is that give me a better adjustment than a janky solar output?
You just you just kicked open the rabbit hole.
Okay.
Um, there are a number of different ways to value a solar system. And again, you have to think about this too, right? As a market by market thing. Like the value of a solar array, a solar system in the great northern woods of Michigan, where you're surrounded by nothing but tall trees, is not going to be the same as it would be in, Southern California, right?
Let me ask you a question on this
Sure.
real quick. Does it depend on not the economics, but the like California real, like we can't do plastic bags here. We're very environmentally conscious as much
Right.
as we can. So
Mhm.
if I went to Texas, I mean, Texas got just as much sun as we have here in California.
Yep.
But I don't know if the demand for solar is as much in Texas. I mean, maybe because the energy, but like we have all these mandates, like in California, everyone gonna have to have solar. Like,
Mhm.
so does that play into it? What is that called? Like the
It's literally called demand. I
okay,
mean, that
okay. I
is
was
really
like,
it.
I don't
Demand
know.
and its utility within its market, right? So if it has no real utility, then there's probably not going to be a great big demand for it.
Okay.
If it does have utility and there is demand, if there's demand, people are usually willing to pay a premium for it, right?
Okay.
So it's completely a regional thing. And even like you just mentioned, in a two sunshiny states, right? But the demand for solar might be so limited in Texas that there's really no
Yeah,
market driven data
because
to
of
come up with
the
an
like
adjustment.
internal
There
make
are ways that you can figure out still what the value of that system is and how it could equate to an adjustment to a dollar amount, but it takes a lot of work, right? Because now you're talking about bringing in your income approach, right? Um, like I said, you kicked open a rabbit hole, and we could probably talk about that for a long time in great detail. That would just bore everybody to death.
Yeah,
So
I'm sure. Let me ask you another question.
sure.
I feel like appraisers are not appraisers. I'm not going to make that big of a statement, but I feel like healthcare can be a racket. I also feel like sometimes appraisers can be a racket. Like they want to be charging extra fees for everything. Like I don't like before when it was real busy,
Mhm.
real busy, I would get
Yeah.
these things kicked back and it would be like the most dumb reason they want to charge me more.
Mhm.
What's been the most crazy one that you've seen? I feel like it's getting better nowadays. Now it
I will say this, that most appraisers I know, they want to go to that house one time.
yeah.
They don't want to go back out. They just want to go complete the assignment, get paid their fee, and never have to visit that property again. Nothing personal against anybody, right? But believe me, the couple $100 that you're dangling there for them to drive 45 minutes when they already have their entire day is scheduled and set for this part of town. They have no intention of wanting to go way back over to that side of town, right? It's more of a headache than anything else, right? Most appraisers I know, they are going to avoid a 1004D at all costs, right? But they're
How
going to
come I
report it
can't
if they
send
have
him
to.
pictures? You guys
What's
feel
that?
like no pictures. There's been times I feel like, can I just send you pictures? Like, no. Can we
I
fix that?
I would, yeah, you and me both, right? I would like to think that the future of this profession is going. We already are. We're seeing the influx of technology, what it can do, what it can't do, right?
Yeah.
I think everybody at this point has heard about the hybrids, right?
Uh-huh.
The inspection-based waivers. There's tons of those. I'm just going to toot our horn here for a second. We are on the literally the cutting edge, the bleeding edge when it comes to the third party inspections, right? And getting that information to the appraiser. We have the best product on the market, right? That's an example of technology being a game changer in how we get stuff done. I would like to think that the GSEs and everybody involved, as we move through this and as technology gets better and better and better, at some point in the future, we're going to see it where people are going to be like, here, I got the repairs done.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm waving to you.
Yeah.
Here I
Let's
am in the photo.
yeah. Here's my
Yeah.
smoke alarm. Yeah, the smoke alarm is the one that gets me every time. I'm just like, really, you guys get the smoke alarm up? Like, it's supposed to be up, right? And then like it's this big thing of who's going to pay it. I
I
think the
can't
most,
stress enough, yeah, if you know that there's a local jurisdictional law in place that requires A, B, or C, right? Just have that in place before you have the appraiser come out, right?
yeah,
Don't worry about it after the fact. Especially if we're talking $20, right? A $20 bill is going to save you all this time
150
and
to go back out. Yeah.
yeah, yes,
Brace the water heater if you're in California and get those dang smoke alarms and CO2 things up.
yes,
So annoying. I had
yes.
one, we're going to wrap this up for a second. I had one guy want to charge me more because my house was on a hill. And I was like, you want to charge me more for the house being on the hill? Like it's in the Hollywood Hills, so like the clients could pay it. But I was like, no, send that back. And I kind of felt like you could have told me there's going to be a lot of traffic at 5 o'clock, and I probably would have paid that. I probably would have been like, you're right. You're right. Traffic does suck out here.
Traffic sucks. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll pay you more for it. I understand. But it being on a hill, sir.
There are times where a property is going to be unique because of its location or maybe the features that it has, right? And I mean, if it's a complex assignment, it's not unreasonable for an appraiser to be paid more. But I mean, if that's the expectation in that neighborhood, like you do these all the time, you should be geographically competent. The house being on a hill shouldn't be that big of a deal. But again, case by case basis, I do not want to pass judgment on anyone. So
maybe I was like, it's really tough to park there, so I could have paid you more because parking is going to be a bitch. But that's a whole nother thing.
right.
All right. Well, I hope you guys learned a lot today. Appraisals, not the funnest part of what we do, trying to ascertain value, but it's so important that you know this information, especially if you're out there fixing and flipping houses, because you're making decisions on profitability, and these things can dramatically impact your profitability, your ability to refi out, how much cash out you're getting, and how much you end up with at the end of the day. If you are a real estate agent or a loan officer, hopefully this gave you information on doing effective reconsiderations of value, what you should be looking for, the best places to look first. And then also, if you guys need a great AMC, I'm telling you, Class is where I send all of my stuff. I love being able to call them and talk to them and having a dedicated professional. And I really feel, I know he said he doesn't feel like the words advocating, but I feel like I have a partner in the process, and a lot of times being able to like bridge that gap between me as an LO, like getting my value, cut. That's not a fun experience for the client or anybody. And being able to like place a call and be like, hey, listen, I need you to speak appraiser talk to my appraiser. And we just had this conversation a little bit ago where it was like, yeah, I mean, the appraiser did a good job. I don't like it, but I can't say he didn't do a good job on his appraisal. Is there anything in here where we might be able to squeeze some more value out of this because I really need it? And then talking this one back and forth and going, maybe in some of these like upgrades, because upgrades really get into like it's really opinion. I mean, the whole appraisal is an opinion, but maybe we can like share some light with the appraiser, and one appraiser to the next come out with a better outcome than me just typing up some stuff and being able to like get them on our side. And
I say all the time that from where I sit, it seems like the appraisal is kind of like a speed bump in the process, right? It's just everybody has to slow down a little bit, get over the speed bump, and then you're just back on down the road again, right? Moving right along. It's not a problem until the speed bump tears your muffler off, right? If you're in one of those situations, reach out to Paige. She can reach out to me. I'm always happy to help. I'm always here to answer any questions. We appreciate the partnership, Paige, more than you know. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for sponsoring my event. Without even a thought, John was like, yep, we're in. We'll help you guys with this. So I'm excited for a long partnership with that as well. So thank you so much for your time today. And I don't know, guys, I'll set something else up where you can learn some more stuff about lending. And I don't know, have a great day.
Thanks for having me out. See you soon.